Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Okay. We are on verse 28 of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. We did verse 27 last time, and the English translation is, Supreme bliss verily comes to this yogi whose mind is quiet, peaceful, whose passion is quietened, who is free from sin and has become Brahman. So Krishna Bhagavan in the previous verse was describing that when somebody merges, then the supreme bliss comes. And along the same lines, he's going to talk about little more about how it happens. Because since we are not there yet, it's usually like we still have questions about it. Doubts, questions. So the way I'm looking at it, Krishna Bhagavan is like plugging all the different doubts, approaching it from every possible angle that human mind works, and questions and all. So that's in that context, this verse 28 is there. Let's see what it says over here. One second. Okay. The verse is, Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmashaha sukhena brahma sansparsham atyantam sukham ashnute. Yunjan means the one who's practicing yoga. Evam does. So ये evam word पे निखिलानंद जी ने काफी जोर दिया कि he's talking about the way Krishna Bhagavan described. So not some wherever we have to. That's why I always say that when we are reading Bhagavad Gita or trying to study it, understand it, we have to leave our old concepts and fully understand what Krishna Bhagavan is saying, with a lot of Shraddha. Then we will get it, what he's saying. Sada is always Atmanam, the self. Yogi, here he's talking about the meditator. Vigata kalmashaha, free from sin. So there was the same type of word was there in the previous verse. Akalmashaha, one who is free from sin. And yahan par bola vigata kalmashaha. Vigat is a little stronger word. It's like when we say the word va aage lagao na, it's a vairagya. So vairagya means, transcending rag and dvesh both. So this is a little more transcendental he's talking about, completely above it. It's not affecting that person at all. That's what. Sukhena is easily. So sukh word, there are different contexts to use this word, but sukh means happiness, but here it means bada easily, sukh se mil jata hai. That's why they say sukhasan, because, aram se baithne wala asan. So there is a different connotation in this. Brahma sparsham, caused by contact with Brahman. It's something like when we come in contact with heat, we get warm. Or if we come in contact with, ice, we get cold. So something like that, but we'll see more what it means. Atyantam, infinite, jiska koi ant na ho. Antam and atyantam. So, Sanskrit language is pretty interesting. So it's like a negative of ending. So it's non-ending means infinite. Sukham is bliss. Ashnute, he enjoys. So what is Krishna Bhagavan saying? It's talking about the same state, but he's explaining in another angle now. So first, like I was saying, this word evam means the way Bhagavan revealed how to do meditate. So he was just, Nikhilanand ji repeats a lot And I think that is important because then only it will sink into us. So I'm going to repeat a little bit of what we have done previously, so that will help us now. So he's saying that he was reminding us that meditation means paying attention to something, right? So he was saying, he gave a very great example. He said that, see, Hindi में word meditation को क्या बोलते हैं? ध्यान. You know? So ये ध्यान word कहाँ से आया? ऐसे कि रेलवे स्टेशन पे भी लोग जो है ना बोलते हैं कि कृपया ध्यान दें फलानी गाड़ी ये प्लेटफॉर्म से नहीं उस प्लेटफॉर्म से आने वाली है. तो इस दिन जो लोग ध्यान नहीं देते हैं ना, वो बैठ के पकौड़े खा रहे होते हैं चाय पी रहे होते हैं. सडनली जैसे अरे सब लोग कहाँ चले गए, देन दे विल रन बिकॉज दे हैव नॉट गिवन ध्यान. बट इफ यू गिव ध्यान, pay attention to the important things at that time, you will not miss your train. I thought that he gave a very beautiful analogy. So that's what he's talking about. Dhyan means paying attention to something. So he's saying that he was just reminding that just like when Bhagwan said, Evam means the way I have explained to you the meditation, not some other places you have read and done and all that, but just focus on what I'm saying. And so he was just reminding that, okay, if we focus on the breathing or some mantra or those things, that will help to develop the focus, no doubt about it. But ultimately, you have to give attention to the self. Why? Because you want to get abidance in the self. That's the whole purpose, establish in the self, in that knowledge, you can say, or self. So because he was saying that whatever you pay attention to, and whatever you meditate upon, that's where you get the abidance. So in the worldly sense also, if I want something really badly in the world and I keep thinking about it and I keep paying attention to it, then I will work accordingly, and that's what I will get. So even in the world, we do, everybody knows how to meditate, but on what? That's the question. So, and he was just reminding again that when we meditate on anything other than the self, then that called, tandra in the Sanskrit language. You get kind of shant and all that. You get some benefit, but you won't get that final experience. For that, we have to, pay attention to the self. And then we should know what the self is. And we have gone through it so many times. So now what he's talking about here, the word yunjan means, Yunjan and Sada, these words kind of go together. Yunjan is that connecting with the higher and constantly meditating on the self. So by doing that, what happens? This person becomes Vigata Kalmashaha, means all impurities are gone. And, he's just reiterating the same thing that what he's saying, but in a more forceful manner. So then, Nikhilananji analyzed this. This is a very good analysis over here. So he's saying that in the beginning, our whole purpose is to get rid of the negative thoughts, right? Because we have so many negative thoughts come in us. So, thoughts and develop some good values and all that. And that's how we kind of get rid of the impurities, by getting rid of the negative thoughts. But as we progress, he said, go deeper and deeper in meditation, even the good thoughts become an obstacle, So it's like they also create disturbance. So when he says Vigata Kalmasha, he's talking about that final stage when you even go beyond that. Because the good thoughts also are distraction only for a meditator. Because the final stage you have to go to. So he's saying that obviously in the initial stages, the idea is to purify the mind, so avoid the bad and harness the good and all that. That's very good. But later on, both have to be dropped and shift your attention to the self. And with Vigata Kalmasha, what has happened? The mind has become as pure as a human can make it. Totally pure from that stage. What does that mean if we say in a common language? That it has no other desire left but to connect to the higher. All the worldly desires are dropped over there. And so he's saying that it seems that in the Shastras, I don't know which one, but he mentioned that there is an analogy. And see if you can connect to this analogy about this whole situation. So you're saying that we are just loitering in this world, for such a long time. He doesn't mean just this janma, huh? Because whenever they talk about sansar, we get stuck at just this life. Hey, as though this life. But he's talking about many janmas. So the analogy is this, that, there is a bird on a ship, it seems. A ship has gone in some deep sea, और उसके साथ एक bird भी चली गई, right? So the bird is kind of connected to the ship now and is getting everything that it wants. And all of a sudden the bird says, oh, I want to go to some other place. And the bird is, now just imagine that you are in the absolutely middle of nowhere. There's water all around. And this bird is not one of those birds which can fly like 10,000 miles and still be okay. No, it's just ordinary small bird. So this bird is trying to get away from the ship and trying to find some food or something, and it goes, and I say, oh my God, I can't find it, comes back. Then it goes another direction, comes back. In the end, सब जगह भटक भटक के ना वो वापस शिप पे आ गई because it said, अरे मेरा तो यहीं पर जमने वाला है, nowhere else. So now this analogy, that's where the bird finds peace and happiness, And so this analogy is saying that Nikhilananji was talking about, after traveling in so many different yonis, so many different lives, so many different lokas, because, somebody was saying that how Earth may not be the only Earth. There may be other Earths, God knows. There are so many billions and gazillion stars. So how can we say that this is the only place there is life? Okay, there are other lokas. So even going in different yonis, many lives, different lokas, but we have not found complete happiness. We are still feel like, oh my God, something missing. So, and he also said that many experiences we have had, we have been a plant, we have been an animal, trees, whatever, if you believe in the theory of evolution, we have gone through all that. And in every species, they want to, there are a couple of things common, maintain the body, or whatever, and experience joy. But we have not found this complete joy and peace. So I thought this analogy was really beautiful. Bhatak bhatak ke, we come and then it can be found in the self. That's what the Shastras are saying. That's what Krishna Bhagavan is saying. So when after roaming here and there, you come back to the self, pay attention to the self, that's where all these things happen together. In a sense, the mind is completely pure, and such a person, he experiences atyantam sukham, it says, okay? Brahma says, these words are, let's analyze these words. Sukhena Brahma sansparsham atyantam sukham ashnute. So he's saying that this yogi, in a state of realization, he calls it easy, like easily he gets to this happiness. Actually, the word is sahaja. But that's why it's called sahaja samadhi. Sahaj means बड़े आसानी से बोलते हैं ना, सहजता से मुझे मिल गया वो. Sahaj, that's the connotation over here for sukhena, sahajta. Without any effort, effortlessly, he experiences a sukha if he comes to that stage. So why it is like that because he said, now compare the same kind of, not same though you can't get. If I want a joy from the world, I have to make a lot of effort. Because, it's so conditional it is. Suppose if I want something, I feel, just think of yourself, 30 years ago, you wanted a particular car to give you happiness. Particular brand, कितना खटपट करना पड़ेगा उसके लिए. And America में तो और भी confusion है. There are 30 different models and this and that. And then you go and, so just I'm giving an example. So for the efforts that you need for the joy which happens with the contact of senses and mind in the world requires tremendous amount of effort. Lot of obstacles come, to get something. Any small thing also, so much effort is required and obstacles happen. So he's saying that there's another aspect to it which we don't think about. There's another obstacle that happened, which is not such a bad obstacle, but it's considered an obstacle in the spiritual world. Suppose if you accumulate a lot of punyas, then you end up going to a loka like a swarga loka to enjoy. a vacation. अभी सब लोग बोल रहे थे ना कि हमारी सभी families, बच्चे बच्चे सब जा रहे हैं vacation पे. Vacation is only short time. They earn their money, they have the time, they earn the time to go. Now they're going, and then it's going to be temporary. They're going to have to come back. Same thing when you go to Swargaloka, it's not permanent. So that's what he was saying. That also becomes like a obstacle. So compared to that, this particular joy and happiness you get is effortless, sahaja. That's what he's talking about. And then how does it happen? So here Krishna Bhagavan used the word Brahma Sansparsham, means coming in contact with the Brahman. And and when Swamiji is going to talk about it in the commentary when we read Chinmayananji, he's going to explain that actually it is not, they have to use this word contact because we understand only that kind of language. Because we get happy when our senses come in contact. That's why they are using, but actually it is not even the right word. But just all it means, contact means being in tune with that self. It's like something like the river gets totally relaxed and happy when it merges with it. So you can say comes in contact with the ocean, but when it has to become with the ocean to have that. So, and then this particular sukh compared to the worldly sukh is atyanta, means without the end. No end to it. It's infinite, because sometimes we don't know how to explain this, right? Because we have talked about it, that how much joy of eating a rasgulla or joy of getting some big lottery, different time people have different value to the joy. Or hey, my grandson smiling at me. That's another kind of joy. But all these are finite joys. So he's saying this particular joy they are talking about is infinite. That's why atyantam. So and Nikhilananji was reminding us that this particular kind of joy Krishna Bhagavan has talked at many different verses, and this is what is experienced by the yogi in the state of that final state of meditation. This is the infinite joy he's talking about. And why? Because that is the nature of the self. If you have become self, then this endless joy is the nature of the self. That's why. So he's saying that he gave another kind of example. He's saying that we experience that joy because we have now arrived home. That's what he called, It's like the same like that bird. Yaha bhatak rahi thi, wo bird finally arrived home. And this particular happiness has no end and no beginning, kind of. And why he compared it to no beginning and end? Because again, he said that like the worldly joys, there are 2 or 3 verses that have already come in Bhagavad Gita. One was, it came in chapter 2, and then one in chapter 5, where he said that the joy that we get from the world with the contact of senses with the object always has a beginning and at the end. Okay, so that's why he's comparing this joy to that this one is exactly opposite of it. And he's saying that particular joy that we get in the world, we experience sukh for a while, and then when it is gone, because that's the nature of it, we feel a big vacuum. All of a sudden, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's not there in my life anymore. So it drains our energy instead of giving us. We have experienced that, right? Suddenly we have something which is giving us some little bit of joy and it's gone. Then we are so dukhi because it creates that vacuum. That's why it's not everlasting. And I think he did a great analysis, the comparison. So he's saying this person in the deep samadhi, sometimes what can happen, now he's comparing 2 different situations. One is, okay, this person is in deep samadhi. He has reached that state, but sometimes some pressure of the sanskar or vasanas may be deeply embedded in us from previous lives. So initial stages mein kya hoga? You will come out of it still, right? That's why he had mentioned कि practice करते रहो, right? अभ्यास के लिए बोला था उन्होंने, same type of situation. So, but he's saying finally जब complete abidance हो जाता है ना जिनका, and that is the same state like what is that Siddha Prajna in chapter 2. When Arjun asks, hey, ऐसे भी लोग होते हैं क्या? Who are completely abiding in that, and how do they behave? Then Krishna Bhagavan gave a complete description of that. A similar thing, what's happening over here, that he's talking about the person who has reached that final state where it is completely abiding in it and all those sanskars are roasted, So then what happens is, even when he opens his eyes, he's meditating. See, I think Joe, I don't know if he's here today. Oh, he's here. So he talks about that. No, like being in samadhi all the time, or sometimes we discuss in the class that, okay, he's interacting with his world. He has open eyes, but his abidance in the self is absolutely firm. So as though his meditation has never broken, that is called sahaja samadhi. So it is like no need to close your eyes anymore. If he wants to, he can, but it's not required. So only in the initial stages, this, sit for us, people like us, 100% we needed, sit down, practice this and all. But जिसका हो गया ना, वो बैठे या नहीं बैठे, उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला. He is still in the sahaj samadhi. So this is the great state of realization of that yogi. And then, so in the next verse, he's going to explain how does he look at the world, same like the Sthita Prajna ke Lakshan hai na, something, uska thoda saar batayenge next mein. That's going to be revealed in the next verse. So this is what this verse is all about. Before we read, anybody has any question, comment, or anyone wants to add anything? These days, everybody goes into meditative state. Moment I asked that. Anybody volunteer?
I have a question here.
Yes.
I had difficulty understanding one thing where it says that in the end, when you are merging with the self, that should be the only thought in your mind. But I thought in the end you have to even give up that thought.
True. And वो ना कुछ automatically होता है, which we may not, exactly like when we go to sleep. I have drop everything, and when I fall asleep, I don't know. That's when, remember he did say, Bhagavan said that different saints and sages explain that state in different ways. Like Tejamayanji said, then magic happens. And somewhere one of the saints said that Brahman sucks you in, just like Nidra Devi sucks you in. Because now, okay, you are ready now. I'm going to take you in now, So that's what in one of the commentaries, Swamiji said, Chinmayananji said, your job is purify the mind. Drop. Final dropping kab hoga, we don't know. But as long as if you do like scientists say, if you do A, B, C, D, E, you will get this result Z, right? So Krishna Bhagwan ने सारा बता दिया A, B, C, ऐसे करते जाओ, फिर भगवान पे छोड़ दो. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other? Any volunteers to read? Otherwise, Anilji, you can read.
The yogi always engaging the mind thus in the practice of yoga, freed from sins, easily enjoys the infinite bliss of Brahman contact. Engaging himself thus in the battle for evolution and the consequent inward mastery, a meditator steadily grows out of the shadowy regions of his own spiritual ignorance and imperfections to smile forth in luxurious extravagance into the sparkling sunshine of knowledge. When the meditator keeps his mind undisturbed in the roaring silence within, in the brilliant white heat of meditation, his mind gets purified like a piece of iron in the blacksmith's furnace. In short, as we said earlier and elsewhere, the halt moment is the last possible frontier line unto which human effort can raise the mind.
So here Swamiji explained in his own whatever you are talking about, that hey, you keep doing all these things and that hushed silence in the end, roaring silence. See, there's such a contradicting word, roaring and silence. I know. Means it's just, I think saints and sages also have the same problem. They know the state, but they don't know how to exactly. So they're just trying to make us think, make them deep silence mein. And then halt moment, this is how far human effort can go. And that's why the other language they use in the Vedanta is that after that is the grace of God that comes in. And the way one of the, I think it was Tejo Manaji explained it so beautifully. He's saying we are finite, right? In our mind and body, we are finite. Now, finite is trying to get infinite. जिसका कोई comparison ही नहीं है. So then, in the end, we have to surrender to the grace of infinite because we are nothing, right? So they're just telling you the technique, but in the end, infinite has to have the grace on us.
There it ends itself just as a balloon, as it goes higher and higher, blasts itself in the rarefied atmosphere of the higher altitudes and drops down, merging the balloon space with the space in the altitude. Similarly, the mind too, at the pinnacle of its meditation, shatters itself and drops down, leaving the ego and merges with the Supreme. Just as the space in the balloon automatically and naturally merges with the space outside when once the balloon is exploded, so too, when the finite mind is ended, with ease it attains the infinite bliss arising out of its contact with Brahman.
I mean, Swamiji gave such a fantastic analogy. It's like balloon going up higher and higher. So you are rising yourself in meditation, and in the end, it will pop. And if you think about it, the space is it's not like it's really merging. It was already merged, but from the mind's perspective, it's as though, and he calls it वो जो पाप हुआ ना, ego खत्म हो गया सारा. Because one of the ways that they explain that the mind is when the ego is rising, that's where mind is. I am separate, I can do this, I can do that, that kind of thing. So I think he gave an absolutely brilliant analogy. And then now he's going to talk about contact with Brahman, that term. Go ahead.
The term contact here has served as a convenient handle for the dualist to argue that the Lord is indicating thereby the existence of the truth principle as separate from the truth seeker. Obviously, this is absurd. The argument of the dualist can be acceptable only if we can afford to forget the definition of the term Brahman. The Hindu scriptures, Brahman is the all-pervading reality, which is limited by nothing, and therefore we cannot have a knower of Brahman or a feeler of Brahman who has a separate existence to come in contact with Brahman and enjoy the bliss. It can only mean, if a consistent sense is to be read in the scriptures, that the individual seeker becomes Brahman and comes to experience the infinite beatitude. It is the essence of truth.
So he's just telling you that actually the word contact is not the best word to use. That's what he's trying to tell. But he also said the dualist will immediately say, oh, Bhagwan ne bola ki, as though there are two different entities and blah, blah, blah. But, then he's reminding us, what is the definition? It's something like, even in different religion, they say, oh, my God, your God, this, that. But every religion says that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. If something is present everywhere, how can it be another one? Right? So they're pointing to the same reality and they still fight about my God, your God. Same kind of thing he's talking about over here. That actually there koi contact nahi hai, magar as though, because that's the only language we understand. That's all he's saying.
Krishna is here trying to make an agitated, restless, inquisitive intellect understand that the positive and dynamic reality can and shall be gained when the mind and intellect are transcended. Had he said the seeker will become happiness, Arjun would have hesitated to accept it, believing that the self there is no positive joy. Believing that in the self there is no positive joy. Make his unprepared intellect perceive the experienceable joy of the infinite, the divine coward has to borrow a vivid phrase from his ordinary life, and so he says that the meditator attains the infinite bliss through the Brahman contact. This phrase, Brahman contact, should be understood as self-contact in contrast to the finite joys which we ordinarily gain in life through the not self-contact.
So we went through this like in detail, that the reason we understand this language कि जब हमको कोई चीज़ मिलती है तो हम बड़ा खुश हो जाते हैं, joy मिलता है, तो contact से मिलता है हमको. So he's saying that, okay, yeah, Brahman contact से you will get that infinite joy, even though this word is not correct, he's saying. And we discussed it, why it is not correct. So anyway. And then the other thing is that because you become Brahman yourself, you realize that's what's called self-realization. You realize who you are. There are so many different ways you can explain this. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, Umaji, that how can the finite and infinite mix? It's only the infinite. You realize that you are that infinite. That's how the balloon example fits in very well.
Yeah.
Because you are infinite and the infinite is mixed.
Yeah.
Then
And
we
absolutely.
The form, but that's the... Otherwise, the finite and the infinite are
Cannot.
two opposite.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's something like the waves and the ocean, right? The wave is thinking I'm separate, but it has no separate existence. It's H2O anyway. It is.
Right.
Yeah, it's got temporary form, and now all of a sudden, oh, I'm the ocean only. Itself. That's a self-realization.
That's water. That's H2O, and that's H2O.
Yeah.
So there's no difference. So it's beautiful.
The other thing that I thought was interesting was when the balloon burst, the skin drops.
That's the ego, समझो उसको.
That's the ego.
बिखर के चला गया. Actually, somebody gave a very good example of the ocean. He's saying कि ocean में waves भी होती है और एक foam भी होता है, right?
Yeah.
तो बोले वो foam में कुछ दम नहीं है, फिर भी सबसे ऊपर आके बैठ जाता है. Because waves में ना वो foam ऊपर रहता है. तो he says that's how ego is. हवा में कुछ है नहीं, ऊपर आके बैठ गया, फिर कट हो गया. Once it comes to know, it has no existence. Because ego is nothing but a false idea, right? That I'm separate. That's what it is. Yeah.
But it is so powerful that the skin of the balloon is holding it from merging.
Yes, there you go. So our ego is the one that is holding us from merging. It's a beautiful analogy.
Amazing.
Totally. And it only bursts when you go up. Sorry, who's saying?
And that is why they say don't pay attention to forms. It's just an illusion.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other example is, whatever the example they give, like gold and the ornament. The ornaments, thinking, oh, I am so separate, I am so this, and कोई गले का हार बना हुआ है तो कोई पाँव में पहना हुआ है, and somebody might have inferiority, but in the end it's all gold. When you go to a goldsmith, he's not going to worry about where you have wearing your thing. He's going to give you the same value. So that's exactly right. That form, but it's very hard in the world because we are so conditioned, But we have to be careful about this knowledge, because sometimes saints and sages will say कि दूसरा ego भी rise हो सकता है. Oh, now I know what Brahman is, so I don't need to do anything. व्यवहार में भी कोई saint and sage आएगा, oh, तू भी Brahman, मैं भी Brahman, why do I have to touch your feet? Or a baby and a grandfather is the same. No, those we have to be sensible, and vyavahar is separate. Is something for our insight. That how to understand. So we should not be mixing those things because there's a danger sometimes. Any other question, comment?
Should I read the next line?
Yeah, sure.
In the following stanzas, we get a description of the effects of yoga and the consequent perception of oneness in the pluralistic world.
Both. So the next one is going to tell you कि जो ऐसी स्थिति में पहुंच जाता है वो how he sees the whole world. जो oneness लोगों को दिखाई देता है ना उसके बारे में description होएगा because that is a hallmark of a realized saint, that he doesn't discriminate from that perspective to anyone. He might correct somebody, in the Vihavar and all that. It may look like he is, but actually inside his heart, he is. And the best example that Swamiji gives about that is our own body. We feel a sense of oneness in the whole body. So if one part of our body gets injured, the rest of the body comes to its rescue, to help it. Even if, and the most famous example, which I absolutely love, is he said that if my finger accidentally goes into my eye, scratch my eye, I don't chop off my finger. The same hand will go and massage the eye. That's how the saints and sages work. Because वो कितना भी गिरा हुआ हो, कितना भी fallen हो, वो उसको कभी मतलब वैसे दृष्टि उसको लगेगा मेरा ही कोई हिस्सा ऐसे खराब हो गया. I have to help him. That's what it is. They see that one. It's very hard for us because we immediately go good, bad. उसमें चले जाते हैं. But they are looking at it from a different perspective. Any other point? If not, then I can close Bhagavad Gita here because it's still, on one hand, it's simple, but there's a lot in it. And we don't want to pile up too much because the whole week we have to just kind of soak that in, whatever he's saying. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhya moksha ishyami ma shuchaha. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.